Okay, we're live. Um, yeah, sorry guys. I just had to fight my laptop. Um, just suddenly disconnected from Wi-Fi and refused to connect. So sorry I'm late. Uh, yeah, let's get started. Um, I hope my screen actually works this time. Um, okay, okay. Yeah. So welcome to today's stream. Today is Um, all about Leaf MVC. Um, okay, I don't really think that's working. Let me just retry this. Okay, okay. I believe that will work now. Okay, yeah. So yeah, today is as promised, we'll talk about Leaf MVC, our new Leaf MVC versions. Um, we'll talk about Leaf auth and every thing that has changed in Leaf. I actually hope this is working fine. Um, yeah, trying to get a preview here, but that's not working for some reason. But yeah, just yes, it's working. So, um, yeah, let's just get into it. We can start off with Leaf MVC. I don't know if you guys were able to take a look at our blog post, but we released a blog post a couple, like a week ago. Not about, I think about this one, yeah. So yeah, we promised to release version 3.8 somewhere. Yeah, what will be 3.8? Um, and that's been done now. So just yesterday, version 3.8 was rolled out, and it comes with the changes that we described. So um, that whole customizable directory structure, um, fixes to the mailer, a bunch of new commands, and uh, a bunch of new defaults, I guess. Um, so yeah, a lot of that happened in version 3.8. Um, the initial plan was to sort of remove the config folder in version 3.8, but that didn't happen because so let me just go back here to the v3.x branch, and anything you see on the 3.x branch is the latest version of version 3. Um, wait, it's actually I have no idea if this is working. Oh, yikes. Yeah, so it wasn't working. Yikes. Okay, okay. I believe it's working now. Uh, bloody hell. It's so annoying when you have to fight your own devices. Okay, but we're good now. We're good now. We're actually good now. So yeah, sorry about that. Once again, um, let's okay, now I've replaced my actual screen with uh goodness. This is this is a mess. This is actually a mess. Um yeah, this is what you get for live stuff. Yeah, probably why it's a better idea to make videos instead of going live. Okay, okay, okay. Anyway. Um yeah, so as I was saying, version 3.8 of Leaf MVC has been released. Um and it comes with a bunch of new things and a bunch of removed things as well. But then there are no breaking changes. So the promise is, from version 3.7 to version 3.8, nothing should break, and In my books, I think we've delivered. Um, yeah. So it comes with some of the things you would get when the actual version 4 is released. So if you don't know about version 4 of Leaf MVC, which has, started being developed, you can check this out. Um, there is a V 4.x that has everything about Leaf MVC 4, which we'll talk about in a bit. But yeah, for now, let's just look at version 3.8 of Leaf MVC. Yeah. So 3.8, version 3.8 of Leaf MVC pretty much comes with, so first things first, you can see the lib folder has been removed, just as we described. I think it will actually be better if I kind of generate a new application, um, yeah, instead of just showing this on GitHub. So let me do that. I have to send this here first. What's general? By the way, if you're not on our Discord channel, please join Discord. You get to ask questions, interact with other people, get help faster. Yeah, so we're live. Okay. So let's go ahead and generate a fresh Leaf MVC project. So we can leaf create 3.8 test. At this point, I probably have so many test directories. So yeah, leaf MVC option 1. Okay, so is leaf MVC 3.8. It gets installed. Yeah, so no breaking changes means we didn't remove the default modules as we said we'll do in version 4. So the actual real change here in version 3.8 is just the directory stuff, and then a few bug fixes, and oh, I guess yeah, bug fixes, CSRF. Um, yeah, so nothing big has actually changed. It's just mostly fixes and then the directory structure stuff. New commands too, and then the way commands are loaded. Yeah, but nothing has changed from your perspective. So, okay, so we can, what do we even name this? V38 test. And then I'll open this up in VS Code. Okay. Okay. Cool. Okay. Um, yeah, so as stated, this is what the directory structure looks like. We did not want to break anything, so it's still pretty much the same directory structure. Lib is gone. When you look inside the app folder, your commands directory is also gone, help is gone. I think there was one more thing that was removed, but it's still the same directory structure. App config public storage vendor, same thing. Okay. First major change, if you look inside the leaf file, which is what loads your, like when you type PHP leaf, this is what loads, is this file which is getting loaded. So basically, you're telling PHP to run this file. So yeah, everything has changed in here. Before, we had a bunch of things where we're initializing the database and all of that stuff. That's all been moved to this load console. And if you want to provide external commands from some of our libraries, I think our Redis library has something like leaf Redis commands. So you can kind of like load all your commands from the Redis module. So if you have external commands you want to register, you can do it this way. But then the commands from inside your application will be automatically loaded. So there's no need to worry about that stuff. That's like the first. I don't know how many people have actually opened this leaf file, but if you have, then this is something that's changed in version 3.8. Yeah, as I mentioned, the lib directory is gone, so you don't have to worry about that. If you want to get it back, you can PHP leave, what's a command? Something, I think config lib, yeah. And then it would regenerate the lib folder and actually add auto loading for anything you put in it. Yeah, okay. I think the next thing is in 3.8, you can actually delete all of this. I kind of showed this last stream, but now it's actually like natively supported. You don't need a dev version of MVC core and all of that stuff. So you can delete all of that. Actually, everything is kind of deletable right now. So you can technically get rid of everything here. But the more stuff you delete, it makes less sense. Sorry. Like it actually makes less sense the more you delete. But technically, you can delete everything here. But then, if you're going to delete everything, I suggest you just use leaf instead of leaf MVC. So, um, yeah. So basically, let's just run this. PHP leaf serve. Okay. And then I'll open this up. And there we have it. So this is what you're actually supposed to see. Yikes. Okay. So that works fine even without a config folder. So you don't need crazy config to get application working. If you need your config directory back, you can, let me just open up a new terminal here. You can PHP leave, what's the command again? Config publish, right? And it'll get back all of your configuration. So yeah, anything you delete, you can kind of get back. So you don't need to worry about, should you delete this or should you not delete that? If you don't need it at the moment, it's just much better to delete it. Okay. Okay. So yeah, basically deleting stuff. You can delete anything you want to, and you can probably get it back if you delete it. If you want to work on a new command, you can PHP leave g command. I think we saw this last week too. So it will generate the console command for you, and it will auto load it. So if you PHP leave, you can actually see the test command over here. PHP leave. So it's yeah, basically that's it for Leaf MVC 3.8, just allowing you to kind of like reorganize stuff, delete what you don't need. You don't have to fight your directories and all of that. Oh, and then we added new comments too. So like for the base controller, base model, stuff like that. Stuff like that. You can actually um, turn all of this on its head if you want to. And then there's like new, um, yeah, new helper comments, right? And then in the, let me just bring back our config PHP leaf. How do I keep forgetting this command? Config publish. There we go. In here, we actually made everything accessible via env. So yeah, we've added more environment variable keys so that you don't actually have to configure these stuff using the configuration files here. You can just put this in the environment file, and more often than not, it would work. There are some cases where you actually have to customize it, because I don't know how env works with like arrays. So if you want to pass an array in here, you probably have to edit the configuration file. But for basic use cases, environment files work pretty well. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's Leaf MVC 3.8. As I said, no breaking change, no real new things. It's just usability enhancements, directory structure stuff, um, new commands. Yeah, yeah. Basically, Leaf MVC 3.8. It's that straightforward. And let me delete this whole project before I actually forget about it. And from here, we can move on to Leaf MVC 4. Okay. So as you know, or probably don't know, this article came out. I actually released this article blog post about plans for Leaf MVC 4, and version 3.8 had some of the stuff for Leaf MVC 4. But then Leaf MVC 4 has a lot more than just the directory structure stuff. I mean, the directory structure is like one major thing, but then there's a lot more besides that. There's like opt-in, opt-out features for modules. So you would rather have to opt into features instead of opting out of them, stuff like that. Console updates. This is available in version 3.8, as we just saw. So, you know, technically migrating from version 3.8 to version 4 wouldn't be that much of a challenge because version 3.8 actually has a lot, not a lot, but some of the features from version 4. So that's actually pretty cool. New commands are also available in version 3.8. This is available in version 3.8. So yeah, migrating will be pretty simple. Um, one new major change is in the way we load your view layer. So actually, let's talk about um, version 4 of Leaf MVC. To use this, we unfortunately have to use Composer. So I'm going to copy this command here. By the way, if you've not checked out the blog post, you can go to blog.leafphp.dev and everything you need is over here. So, hi Alvin. Okay, okay, what's going on here? My app is not empty. I actually have to start deleting all of these dummy applications I've been creating. So let's name this V4 test. Okay, okay. So hopefully this will set up Leaf MVC version 4 for us. I don't know if I actually got the version constraints correctly in the test. Let's just hope I got them right. Okay. So cd v4 test. I hope that's what I named it. Yeah. Okay, good. So we can open this up in VS Code again. And this time it's a version 4 Leaf MVC application. By the way, it's still in development. Um, there are a lot of things here that still haven't been implemented. I think this is kind of done, so I can sort of show that. I can show that off. Um, okay. So same thing as we saw in version 3.8. New console stuff, new console commands, all of that. It's pretty much the same. But you can see the directory structure is actually leaner than what we saw in version 3.8. And that's because by default, version 4 would not ship with the config folder. It will not ship with the lib folder and even the storage folder. Because the goal is in version 4, anything that actually needs a storage folder will create it itself. Right now, a few things are breaking because, as I said, it's still in development. But basically, let's just run this. Let's PHP leaf serve. Okay, and we'll open this up, and we get this. Probably we'll have to change this, the new version, so probably a new screen, I guess. But you can see the storage folder has been created by Blade because Blade needs somewhere to store the cached version of what you see on the screen. So Blade will automatically create the storage folder even though it doesn't exist. It's the same thing for logs and some other things that we'll see. So anything that needs a storage folder will create it, so we don't have to worry about that. Config is kind of like automatically done. Same thing as we saw in version 3.8. So we don't have to worry about that. And so this is our whole directory structure. As I mentioned before, I wish there was something I could do about these files, but uh, yeah, there's not really much I can do about them. There's like server configuration, there's forget for your editor. Yeah, probably nothing I can do about that for now. But yeah, that's what you have. Your public directory is still pretty much the same. You have assets, yeah, and then your index.php file, which is still, I mean, some things have changed. For instance, this won't be there. And now you don't see anything about your view engine in the index.php file. So let's talk about that actually. So I'm going to open up a new terminal again and PHP leaf config publish. Wait, did that? No, I don't think that actually I think that actually breaks sense because our new configuration is, oh wow, it didn't break sense. Okay. I guess we're good. Um yeah. So this is what our configuration looks like now. So the view engine layer that we saw in version 3 has actually been the view engine layer since I think version 1 of Leaf, which is very old, probably like 4 years old. And back at that time, we're trying to sort of, first of all, allow people to configure their own view engines, but secondly, configure as many view engines as possible. I don't know why I thought that was a good idea, but probably to allow people migrate from one view engine to another. So um, yeah, so it actually had a lot of bloat and it was reinitializing some things multiple times per request, which was, I mean, a downer to performance. Um, and that's been fixed now. So the way the view engine stuff works now is you tell Leaf what view engine you are using, and then Leaf will set everything up for you, right? And then the next thing you need to do is to tell Leaf, how to configure your view engine. And then the cool thing is this is done once per request. Previously, that was actually not done once per request for, once again, some very stupid reasons. But version 4 actually fixes that issue. So this is way more performant and, like it's way easier to wrap your head around. Um, so it's Leaf would return whatever view engine you configured here so that you can actually tell Leaf what to do with it. And then if you have to, have like a custom render function too, it's pretty much the same thing. Leaf will return the view engine to you, which you configured here. So now you don't actually have to bind anything to Leaf. You don't need to play around with any view engine stuff. Just tell Leaf what engine you are using and it'll kind of set it up for you. If you run into any errors like maybe function config not found or anything like that, you can just tell Leaf how to configure the engine. And we've also added some other cool stuff like extend. So this was one major pain point for especially the Leaf team. We didn't know where to configure, like add directives and things like that. But with this, you can add your directives here directly. And also this will be used like once per request. So with this, you can go into your, I don't know if this actually how you configure directives. I think it's something like engine dot like compiler or something like that. Really don't remember how that thing works under the hood, but it's something like that. Yeah, I guess basically. And then there's also done once per request. Yeah, I think there's like I don't really remember how this works. Probably have to check the documentation for that, but yeah, you can actually extend whatever um view engine you chose to configure. Yeah, so this is like way faster, and then it gives you a place to add extra configuration. In the case of Blade, you get like extra, like a space to actually add directives and other things. So yeah, the view engine support is just way better. In the documentation for this, I think I actually used something like array given holding. Yeah, this is what you get for test software. Um, I'm actually not going to try to debug this right now. Um, Probably just going to delete all of this. Oh, and then another cool thing is you can keep only the configuration you need, and any configuration not provided will be provided by Leaf itself. So that's another cool thing, I guess. Yeah. So basically, directory structure, view engine optimization. I think in the blog post I used this. Yeah. So this was with Smarty. I don't remember the last time I actually used Smarty, but this was just an example to show that you could do this. Like define your view engine, um, and then teach Leaf how to configure it. So like Smarty has like all of these crazy stuff you have to do. So you tell Leaf exactly what to run and then how to render it, basically. So that's what's happening here. And then from there, you can just use your view engine the way you've always used it in version 3. So, yeah, we are pretty much keeping stuff as close to version 3 as possible. Yeah, so I'm just going to get rid of this. The biggest change, though, in version 4 is everything here is the same, by the way, except database. I'm going to talk about that in a bit. Routes, views, everything is the same. Every single thing is the same, except database. So in the blog post down here, I talked about DB schema files, which I didn't put in the blog post. But yeah, I started whipping up a dummy version of this, kind of like what it would look like. So yeah, let me just quickly show that to you. Okay. Um, let me open up what we currently have in version 3. Um, okay. So the whole point of database schema files, by the way, this is a database schema file. Every database schema file represents a database table in your application, right? In previous versions, you had three things actually. You had migrations, you had seeders, and then you had factories. Okay. So my problem with this migration schema, seeds, all of this stuff, was you could basically have multiple files all referencing the same table, performing just one operation on a database table, and that really didn't make much sense to me. So for instance, we have a user seeder, and what a user seeder is supposed to do is to populate a user's table with some kind of data, like test data or anything. So we can actually put that data in directly like this, or we can use our user factory to generate random users and then save them, right? So that means our user factory is generating users for the users table. I mean, technically, you can use seeders in different ways, but for this example, this is what we are doing, right? So we are generating dummy users, which we are going to use in our user seeder, right? That's two different directories. Look how difficult it is to actually navigate through that. And then finally, you have your migrations where we actually create the users table, right? So to get this to run, you would probably do something like PHP leaf db migrates -- seed. So it would create your actual users table and then use your seeds, which calls the factory. And that was so roundabout. That was actually, I mean, like 4 years. I guess migrations are probably actually older than I am. Like the idea of migrations are probably older than I am. But like for years, that's something everyone has been doing, and we're all comfortable with it. Like it's what we do in Laravel. We do that in Ruby on Rails. We do that in Django. Um, Even in some Go frameworks. JavaScript frameworks actually even picking this up these days. So it's kind of like, I don't want to call it like an industry standard, but it's something everyone uses, and it's a tried and proven concept. Like people have been doing this, and so it's we can't actually say it's a wrong concept because it's worked or it works. But then the problem with this is, besides these three files, if you kind of like decide your server, MySQL database, and this guy. Okay, cool. So as I was saying, the problem here was let's just say our users table has a name, email, like the usual stuff. But let's just say we wanted to add some kind of like, I don't know, maybe some government ID number or something to our user table, right? We could update user, like set change user, add something to user's table, right? And then every time you want to add something, you create a new migration. So you can have up to like 10 different migrations for the same database table, plus your user factory, plus your user seeder, in the case of Leaf, plus your schema, which is kind of getting an update anyway. So that was the problem, or at least that was my problem. Some people don't really have any issue with it, and that's fine, I guess. But having one database table spread over like 10 different files is a big problem for me. So schema files sort of solve that problem by allowing you to merge all of that functionality. Yeah, so you can sort of merge all of that functionality into one file. Yeah, and so that file will have your migrations, um, your seeds, your factories, all of that stuff. Like they would all be in one file, and that was the idea. So that's sort of like the problem and what schema files aim to solve, basically. So yeah, that's what we have with schema files. Um, so I'm just going to walk you through what a schema file looks like. What's going on here? I'm connected. Ah, funny. Okay. Um, I guess this would kind of fix itself. Okay. 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 Yeah. So I was saying I'm just going to show what my solution looks like, or what I hope would be a good solution for this problem. And that's schema files. I actually tried schema files before, but it was a very limited implementation of schema files. That's what you see in Leaf MVC. Even I have had problems using it. So, um, I mean, you have to kind of like tell it exactly what it should do, and that wasn't what it was built for. It was kind of like built to make your life easier. So if you are still telling it what exactly it should do, then that was a failure. So schema files are like an update of these schema files, but instead of trying to work with migrations, they actually entirely replace all your migrations, all your seeders, all your factories into a file that looks like this. So this is, by the way, schema files are written in YML now, YAML, instead of JSON, because to me, YAML looks way readable. It looks way better than a schema file. I'm sorry, than a JSON file. So this is an example. This is JSON. And yeah, I mean, it's clean and it's readable. But then with the YAML, we don't have to deal with like quotes and all of those funny stuff. Um, yeah. Okay. So let's look at this migration. So with this migration, we had increment, string, name, blah, 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 blah. And in a schema file, actually, sorry, I think I was running some tests there. Actually, I pushed that. Yes. So schema files, as I said, replace your migrations, your data seeds, and all of that stuff. And it looks like this. So you can define a bunch of columns, like your name and then a type. And then if you have extra options, like in this case, we want our email to be unique, like only one email per that field. So every user should have a different email instead of allowing the field to have like the same data. Email verify that should be a timestamp. It's nullable. That means the user can choose to not pass this in. Use current, and then on update, we change this. Yeah, these were actually tests I was doing. I was trying to get that working. Um, and then this is not part of the deal. Okay. Um, so schema files actually do a couple of things for you. They automatically add increments. So with migrations, you have to state, like table increments and then table timestamps. But schema files have those things as true by default. So you would, let's see. So if you actually don't want them, then you can set them to false, like increments false, timestamps false. And they are kind of like set on the table level, which is why they are not part of columns. Columns are like, anything else you want to pass in. Remember, token 2 is kind of set on the table level because you would probably only have one um, remember token per table, something like that. So yeah, basically, this is how it works. That's how schema files work. So you can define your columns here, add any other options you need, and then you can also define seeds. So this is like the um what do I even call this? There's another fun thing. So each schema file has everything tied to that table. And then also another thing schema files are changing. Um, Here we have a clear distinction between, like migrations, database seeders, and then factories, right? But um, just like with Ruby on Rails, schema files don't have that problem. So in a schema file, seeds and what do you even call this? Seeds and factories are actually the same thing. So you can use factories in seeds without having to do any fancy thing. So this is what your seeds look like. You have your seeds, how many seeds you want to generate, like dummy data, how many you want to generate. If you want to delete all of the dummy data before you run again, stuff like that. Basically options. Um, None of these are required. Actually, this is not required. By default, it's one. If you want to generate more than one, you can use this. Um, Name can be anything, or you can use faker. So you can use faker this way. You can use leaves tick like this. You have this hash random string. Basically, you can pass in actual data, or you can use faker to generate big data. Yeah. So to actually run this, you still use your PHP leaf db migrate like this. And I actually don't know which database is connected to. Let me. So another change is by if you don't have the database there, Leaf will create it for you once you migrate. I don't know what it's connected to though. Okay, no, that probably failed. So root and I have this test database I was using. I can probably just go back to that one. Okay, my Leaf DB. Okay. Um, so I'm going to drop everything in here, which is just a user table, and PHP leave DB migrate, which will look at both schema files here and generate, their tables and stuff for them. Okay, so PHP leave DB migrate, and that did not work. Yeah, I guess the demo gods are not with me today, but yeah, that definitely did not work. What's missing? Okay, yeah. This is the part where they tell you not to do live demos. But anyway, I think yeah, hello, find the database migrate command, database migrate. I guess it's this guy. And yeah, I guess it's still using the old file. I don't know if I still have this data. Sorry. Clipboard history database migration. Yeah, it's database. What is going on? Migration. Okay, looks like my clipboard has been overwritten. Let me just quickly copy and paste this from online, I think. Okay. Command database migration 2 days ago. Hopefully it actually has the data I'm looking for. Else okay. Okay. I think yeah, I just need to replace this guy. And we're getting some errors. Okay, so our schema file doesn't exist, which means we are probably not running the right version of what I thought we were running. So let me leave install allo at um, v 4.xdev, and then MVC core at v 4.xdev. Okay. One update, zero removals. Okay. Let's. Oh, okay. There we go. Yeah, so we're actually running the wrong versions. That's how compatible version 3.8 is with version 4. So we're actually running version 3.8 dependencies, and it was still working pretty well. That's pretty cool. Anyway, so let's PHP leaf db migrate, and yeah, we got an error. What's going on? Property schema capsule that should not exist. This should be connection. I don't really know. Oh, this is weird. Am I sure we're actually running the correct versions? So this should be schema, I think connection. I don't really remember. Okay, set db connection, and then we have our static schema thingy here. Okay, okay. Hopefully I have pleased the demo gods and I have not. This is supposed to be root as localhost. Did I mess up my env entries? Yes, I did. So this is supposed to be our database, db database here, and then wow. Okay. 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 Finally, the demo gods are actually pleased now. Okay, so let's head back here, and there we go. We have our password reset, email token created up. Because on password resets we disabled increments and timestamps, so we don't get those. So the only things we need here are email type being primary true, so we have a primary key. Let me go to structure. Yeah. Token is a string, just a regular string, created at timestamp, nullable true, so this is nullable. And then on users, also structure, we have, let me close this. Close okay, so users, we have increments because schema files do that for you. They auto increment stuff, they add your yeah. So that's kind of what. Yeah, so from Alvin, database connection with PHP is always something else. Yeah, so that's kind of what schema files are trying to solve. So over here, you just have a YML file, and you just define what you need, and Leaf will take care of the rest. So, yeah, over here we have our increments, we have timestamps because it does that for us. So we define our name as string email, string, which is unique, as we talked about before. Email verifier, we'll just use the current timestamp and stuff like that. Password is a string, and what do we have? ID, primary key, increments, auto increments, on update current timestamp, just as we defined. Password, remember token, because we have remember token here, true. Created or updated up because we have timestamp, true. So basically, this is schema files. So we are basically replacing all of what we had here, actually here. So database migrations, factories, seeds. We are kind of like replacing all of that with just one schema file um, per table, per database table. Okay. So the next thing is with migrations, you always have what do you even call this? You always have like file histories. So if you decide to add one table here, you'd actually have to create a new file for it. And that kind of gives you the ability to roll back your migration, kind of. With schema files, all of that stuff is automatically tracked by Leaf, so you don't need to do anything. It's just one file. So, for example, we are going to go back to our database. So, this is our database. Um, and then let's change our email. Let's make our email not unique. So we just need to change this to false. And then we PHP leave DB migrate. And when we reload this, you can see our index is gone. Email is, you know, no longer unique. And then all of that stuff is tracked internally by Leaf. So if we close this up, head to storage database, you can see our our tables here. We go down here, and then Leaf actually keeps track of all of those stuff, so we can kind of roll back to what we need at any time. Yeah. So basically, Leaf is doing all of the work so that you don't have to do any of the work. You just define your table. If you have to change anything, you change it. And then that's it. That's it. You actually don't need to do anything from there. Leaf takes care of the rest. So yeah, like that's the idea with schema files. They are still, like very early. The only thing I've gotten working is kind of like the migration and then keeping track of what's going on, stuff like that. It's not fully working, and we don't have seeds yet, but that's like one major thing you can expect with um, schema files moving forward. So yeah, basically that's the idea with schema files. Okay, so will this break my app? Definitely not. We just saw we're using version 3.8. We're using version 3.8 dependencies with version 4, so definitely your app will not break. Um, okay. Um, yeah. So if you want to try out version 4, you have this here. I'm going to update the dependency so you don't have to do what I did, like reinstalling all of that stuff. So, so you'll be able to run this and try out version 4 beforehand. But yeah, a lot of things are very new. A lot of things are actually really, really new. So you can just try it out for fun, but then I wouldn't recommend using schema files in production yet, unless it's something very basic, like really, really basic, and you don't need database rollbacks. And yeah, then you're fine. Okay. Um, yeah. So basically, all of this is just to make Leaf MVC simpler, faster, like the usual stuff with Leaf. Simpler, faster, easy to use, and all of that. Yeah. So basically, that's what I've been up to with version 4 of Leaf MVC. Probably next week we'll have Seeders working on something more impressive, so we can look at schema files more in depth. But yeah, the next thing, which is kind of like the final thing here, is roles and permissions at long last. Yeah, so we actually don't really have this like in production right now because I am number one not done with the documentation, and I noticed a few things when I was writing the documentation that I have to fix up. So I want to clear those up before going to PMP and run dev. Yeah. Okay. So let me just show you where I've got into with roles and migrations. Sorry, roles and permissions. My goodness, I've thought about migrations way too much this week. Um. Okay. 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 Cool. So roles and permissions. Finally, um, it's beta dev. I'm going to push out what I have here. I was running a few tests and I noticed a few things we'll talk about. Um, okay, so where to start from? It's going to be a part of Leaf Auth, so you don't need to install anything separately. Um, okay, I guess the first thing is how to create. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about how roles and permissions work together with your user and your application. So this is going to be purely role based, meaning everything is tied to roles in a sense that you assign roles to users, and then if there are any permissions you want the user to have, you actually assign them to that role instead of um, directly assigning permissions to users. So we are not going to allow people assign permissions directly to users. Um, yeah, usually Leaf goes like the unopinionated part. Like we don't try to force people into doing any specific thing. But then in this particular case, I think it's really, really important that we actually force you to not give users permissions directly. Um, there are lots of reasons, but let me start with like a story. So back at work, like way back at work, probably like a company like long ago, um, we implemented like roles, permissions, all of that stuff, usual stuff. We had like people with the marketing roles, the um HR roles, finance roles, like different teams in the company, right? But then it was a startup, and in startups, stupid things happened. CEO wanted some people to have access to other team stuff, so there was like this whole funny business going on. Um, so HR has access to the marketing dashboard, but instead of assigning them like multiple roles, we assigned permissions directly to the users. So um, someone with an HR role had permissions, not a role, just raw permissions to access something else. And that created chaos because basically you take someone's role and the person has permissions they shouldn't have, and you have no idea what's going on. So in that case, like the roles became kind of void. So yeah, we are not going to allow people assign permissions directly to users. Um, that's that's like one of the things we are going to be really, really opinionated on. Um, But yeah, besides the, it's basically just regular roles permission. Okay, so now that that's out of the way, this is how you create roles. Basically, you have like your auth, create roles, and then you create your roles. Like admin is a role, user is a role, guest is a role, and then you have an array of everything that should be a permission. So in this case, um, there's a permission to view a user, there's a permission to view all users, there's a permission to create user, and then more. Um, so an admin can do all of these stuff, a user can do all of that stuff, a guest can only view user, basically. Um, that's the idea. So in this case, we create the roles, assign permissions together, like at once, so that you don't have to create roles, create permissions, link them together. You just do all of that stuff at once. So, yeah. Okay, so we talk about database considerations here because I was trying to do something really funny here. Um, I was trying to think of a way to how do I put it? Like, like Leaf is always about making trade-offs. Like I'm always making trade-offs here and there. So there was a funny thing I could do. By the way, I actually was inspired a lot by this Laravel package, Spotty, whatever, Spotty Laravel permissions. Yeah. Um, so they allow you to number one thing I didn't follow was they actually allow you to set permissions directly on users. Yeah, not allowing that. But besides that, I took a lot of inspiration from some of their functions and all of those stuff. Um, yeah, but then I was trying something funny, right? Because with Leaf MVC, I didn't want people to do something completely different from what people using Leaf would do. So I wanted a kind of like unified API that everyone would use. Um, so basically, with like Leaf MVC, you could kind of like create a seeder and then have your permissions model or something else like that. And then that would work and it would be really, really performant. But then you'd be doing something completely different from what a regular Leaf user would do. So this was supposed to work for both Leaf and then Leaf MVC. That was kind of like how it's built. Um, Yeah, but then now the challenge was if I went this route, it would get called on every request, and then that would be, like that would cost performance. That would be like a major performance cost. So I was trying to find a way to not call the database. So I was thinking of a way to have the roles and permissions, but then not save them in a database in a way that roles and permissions basically wouldn't be saved in the database, but then users will be able to have roles, um, and then the roles have permission. So that's kind of like sorts itself from there. And yeah, I don't really think I've seen any package that does this, but um, that was something I was playing around with, right? So like that's this whole database considerations here, because usually even with this party package, you usually have like a roles table and a permissions table, but then with Leaf's role based stuff, you don't have any of that stuff. So that would probably be confusing to people, which is why I created this. Um, okay, so now we have our roles, right? We have our roles. The next step is assigning them to a user, and this is where things get I mean, it's pretty simple. If you are going to assign a user from like a register form or something, you sign the user up, and then you auth user assign, like you assign a role to that user. Once again, you can only assign roles. You can't assign permissions. So you can't grant permissions. You can only assign roles. So you assign the user a specific role, and then that role comes with permission. So, um, But then this wouldn't work if you are like a system admin and then you are signing other users up. I think Rome had an issue like this quite a while ago, but then I hadn't really gotten the time to check it out. Um, but yeah, I think the solution for this is to have a different function, like maybe create user for. The name is still up for discussion, so if you guys have any um, function name ideas, please just send them to me, because I actually had no idea to brainstorm for how to get great user for. But it's basically, it works just like register, except that since this is not your account, it doesn't log you in. If you try to do this with, like a system admin use auto register, it will log you into the person's account. That's not what you want. So, um, create user for does that. It creates the user, does everything it needs to do, and then it returns that user to you. And then you can user assign something, like user assign admin, user assign something else. Um, yeah, basically. So once you've assigned the user a role, the role comes with its permissions, by the way. You can then check um, for the user's role. So like if both user is an admin, then you can do something. And then by the way, you can grant multiple roles to a user. So the way this works, because we don't allow you assign permissions directly to a user, we allow you assign multiple roles to a user. So in that case, you can have like overlapping permissions and stuff like that. So that would kind of like solve your problem. Um, yeah. So you can check if a user has an admin role or a user role, and um, if either of them is true, then we run something. We also have like it's not. So if user is not an admin, if user is not an admin, or the user is not, like a user doesn't have like a user role, then we do something. Um, as I mentioned, permissions are tied to roles. So once you've assigned a user a role, that role comes with the permissions. We can check if a user can do something based on his role or her role. So auth user can do something. So if the user can, then we actually do this. And then yeah, we can also check the opposite of that. So if a user cannot do something, then that happens. This also takes in a bunch of permissions. So if you have like a bunch of permissions you want to check, you can do that as well. The final thing here is middleware. So all of these functions are available for use for like general route protection. So if you have like an admin route and you don't want anyone besides admins to be able to access this route, you can have like middleware, and then we want to use the S middleware. But then we need to pass in what we want to check. So this is something Leaf middleware actually hasn't been able to do for a while now. But then this is necessary for roles and permissions and all of that. So yeah, this particular bit hasn't been implemented yet because of figuring out a way to make middleware actually make sense. So yeah. So we are going to be able to check if the user is an admin. If the user has multiple roles, or you want to check if the user has like one of these roles, you can do that. Like if user is an admin, or if user is a user, or is an organizer, then we run this. If not, by default, the Leaf Auto through a 404. Not a 403, but a 404, because we don't know how much you want to disclose to your users. Um, yeah, so we do a 404. Basically, a 404 works because like if you don't have access to the routes, then the route basically doesn't exist for you. So yeah, we don't return a 403 for that reason. But then, of course, if you want to change this functionality, you can with auth middleware is, and then you basically tell Leaf what to do if the validation fails. So basically it's all preference. But then this was another thing I'm looking at, because if you go back to protecting your routes using middleware, you actually always have to like auth middleware before you can actually use the middleware. So this is something I'm looking at changing, so that you can use the middleware without having to explicitly like define something for it. So this middleware here is going to get like a lot of changes, like default middleware and all of that stuff. But basically this is the API. I finished the documentation just like a few hours ago, probably like 2 hours or so ago. Um, yeah, so I have a few things to change. Like the middleware stuff, as I mentioned, because I initially implemented this using like one role per user, but then as I mentioned, we need to assign multiple roles because you can't assign permissions directly. So those were some of the changes I was looking at. Um, let me see. I think I had like a dummy file open. So this was something I was trying here. So connect to your database and then auth create roles, which is what I have here. And that's actually so bright. Okay. So I log in. Actually, I'm logging in because I'm usually supposed to do this on register, but it still works because it's the same thing. Then I assign a user, and then I was checking if this can do that. Basically, your flow would be something like that. Right after register or login or create user for, you can access the user and then do something. In this case, I think I have to run this first. Um, let me just open this up in my terminal. It's actually really bright. Okay. Um, PHP Leaf, actually no Leaf serve. Okay, 8080, and then we run this, and then we get the usual stuff. But then in addition, we get roles. We actually supposed to have permissions here as well. But yeah, as I mentioned, I'm still kind of like fixing a few things. So yeah, you get a user role, which in this case is an admin because I assigned an admin role. But there's also supposed to be permissions, which are like a list of all of the permissions for that user. Um, okay. Um, yeah, the documentation, as I mentioned, is kind of like almost done. Um, I keep writing, I keep remembering a few things I left out. And yeah, this documentation actually took way too much time. But if you've been following me for a while, you probably know documentation is probably like one of the most difficult parts of building Leaf. Probably takes more time than actually writing PHP code. So yeah, documentation is pretty much done. Just a few tweaks. Getting the minor things to work, and then the database relations for users and roles, and then roles and actually no, those will not even be in the database in the first place. So I probably don't even need that. I don't even know if this is a good idea, but then well, let's see how it goes. let's see how it goes because I really don't see any reason I can't actually kind of like skip that whole process of doing that. But anyway, um yeah, let's see how that goes. If I run into any roadblocks, I'll just go back to my database model. But if not, then we get all of the performance of just like a file-based PHP approach, which is like super fast because we don't have to work with our database, you know, get permissions, get roles, do all of that stuff. So that just means faster queries, like really, really fast queries every time we're fetching our user. And then Leaf would already know what permissions are for each row because all of that data is right here. Um, maybe I'm just thinking about it really weird, but it kind of really makes a lot of sense to me to do it that way. And then that would mean because the rows are not actually because the permissions are not saved in the database, if you have like some kind of beta test, then you can actually just pop in a new thing here and Leaf will pick it up and it'll work really well. That kind of means you can use this for feature flagging. It's not feature flagging, don't actually do that. But yeah, I think you actually can use this for feature flagging. Anyway, anyway, um, that's not what it was built for. It was built for permissions. So let's just fix the permissions and rules. Um, yeah, but basically that's like the whole API for roles and permissions. And then if you want to remove a role, you can use that on assign, and then that's the end of it. Um, so yeah, that's pretty much roles and permissions. Documentation is done. I'm just testing and fixing issues right now. So we should actually see this ready for use in a couple of days. Um, yeah, I know some of the guys were looking forward to this feature, and it's almost in. Like the next version of Leaf Auth is going to have this. Yeah. Okay. So just a few things to fix would be default middleware, like default behavior for middleware, so you don't have to define this before kind of like using your auth middleware. Um, yeah. Besides that, the rest have just been documentation updates for me. Um, fixing issues, making sure things work correctly. You can see this Leaf MVC version 3.8 and above. You do this version 3.7 and below. You do the other thing. So just documentation updates and then rules and permissions. Um, yeah, bug fixes, stuff like that. I don't know if anyone has any questions. Um, but yeah, if you have any more questions, even after the stream ends, you can always just open Discord. Um, if it's like a Leaf MVC problem, best to go to Leaf MVC, but you can just drop your question in, and if not myself, another person probably will answer. So, um, yeah. So that's it. I mean, that's pretty much what I've been up to the whole week. It's been permissions, Leaf MVC 3.8, Leaf MVC 3.4, the schema file stuff, bug fixes, documentation. Oh right. Someone reported an issue yesterday. That was about React. React was kind of like throwing errors if you PHP leaf. I think I've actually closed the MVC project. Anyway, if you did something like a PHP leaf um, view install React, it would throw an error. And the reason for that problem was React 19, like version 19 of React is now like the stable version of React. And the initial React thing didn't support version 19. I mean, initial 2 is coming out in just a few weeks. So, um, yeah, version 19 is stable now. So that's what was causing that problem. And then the Leaf Vite plugin, so at Leaf PHP slash Vite has also been updated. Okay, I don't know why I can't view that. Maybe I entered that wrong. I don't know. Did I? Hmm, okay, that's weird. Yeah. Anyway, that package has also been updated. So any problems you had with inertia are probably fixed right now. I tested this myself, but then I've not gotten any confirmation from the issue reporter. So um yeah, if you're trying to use React or Vue, it would definitely work now with the Alu console. But if you try with the Leaf, like Leaf Vue install, this probably will not work. I probably have to deactivate this command for the Leaf CLI. But in your Leaf MVC app, the MVC console would work perfectly. So if you're trying to do that, please use the MVC console. I need to make a bunch of changes to this particular command because it works for both Leaf and Leaf MVC. So yeah. So yeah, that's it for me, guys. Leaf MVC 3.8 is live. You can try it for yourselves. Are there any real performance? Yeah, there are like few performance improvements from version 3.7 to 3.8, but nothing drastic. Um, all of the performance improvements, like the real performance gains, are in version 4. So, yeah, I'm going to keep on working on that. The goal is to have an RC a release candidate in like 2 weeks. Yeah, so that's a goal. I don't know how realistic that is, but that's actually the goal. Yeah. So if you missed any of the 3.8 talks or V4 talks or the roles and permission stuff, you can just go back somewhere in the video and you'll find all the information you need and the progress on any other thing. So, um, yeah, that's pretty much it for me. Don't know if there are any questions. Yeah, it doesn't look like there are any questions. Yeah, but if you have any questions after the stream, please hit me up on Discord. I'm usually online there if I'm not drowning in some PHP code somewhere. Yeah, so thanks for joining. I am going to probably go rest up. Um, it's Friday. Have a good weekend to everyone. And I'll catch you here on Friday next week. So enjoy your weekend. Catch you in the next one.